What happens when a billionaire CEO is about to fire his entire kitchen staff? Right before making his final decision, he walks into his bathroom and finds his destiny, a cleaning lady. Fast asleep. Let's listen to the story and let us know what you would rate it. The thick velvet carpet beneath Lily Collins's feet felt like quicksand, each step draining the last dregs of her energy. 16 hours. Her body had been running on fumes for 16 hours straight. A rickety machine operating on sheer willpower and a vague fear that if she stopped, everything would collapse. The VIP floor of the Scott Empire Hotel was always the final trial of the day. An isolated world of silk, marble, and unspoken demands for perfection. She pushed the heavy utility cart, its wheels groaning tiredly against the polished floor. The acrid scent of cleaning chemicals had become a part of her breath, overpowering even the expensive perfumes left behind by invisible guests. Inside Lily's mind, numbers danced a cruel ballet: her father's hospital bills, the looming rent payment, living expenses that grew like a shadow. Every room she cleaned, every bedsheet she smoothed, was just a single, insignificant drop in an ocean of debt. Hours later, as the door to her small apartment closed, the luxurious world of the Scott Empire receded, replaced by another reality. Lily's living space was just large enough for a bed, a tiny kitchenette, and an old table, but to her, it was a sanctuary. She carefully took out a worn, leather-bound notebook, its yellowed pages filled with her grandmother's handwriting. It was the only inheritance her grandmother had left her: baking recipes, secrets of flavor, stories of a passion that never had the chance to shine. Lily's hands, accustomed to the harshness of scrubbing, became soft and graceful as she measured flour and cracked eggs. The warm scent of butter and vanilla spread through the room, chasing away the haunting smell of chemicals, filling the small apartment with a sense of peace and hope. As she pulled a fresh batch of almond cookies from her old oven, a rare smile touched her lips. This was the real her, an artist of flavors, a storyteller of flour and sugar, trapped in the life of a cleaning lady. The dream of a small bakery named Grandma's Corner still smoldered within her, a faint ember buried beneath the harsh reality of her life in the Scott Empire complex. Inside a glass and steel office tower connected to the hotel, Dylan Scott was also feeling exhausted, though he sat in a leather chair worth thousands of dollars. The air in the boardroom was as cold as the gazes fixed upon him. His father, Theodore Scott, a titan of the hotel industry, had just concluded his speech with a statement as sharp as a knife. This empire was not built on mediocrity, Dylan. And your financial report this quarter is coming dangerously close to it. Dylan clenched his fists under the table. He hated these meetings. He hated how his father could always make his achievements seem small. He had worked relentlessly, sacrificing his personal life to steer the corporation through a difficult period after a painful betrayal from a former partner. But for his father, it was never enough. The quality of food service at our flagship properties is declining, a shareholder noted, his voice laced with meaning. Restaurant revenue is down 15%. That is an unacceptable figure, Dylan nodded, his face a mask of composure. I'm aware of the problem. Changes will be made. He left the boardroom, walking across the elevated glass sky bridge that connected the office tower to the hotel. He just wanted to return to his penthouse suite. The only place he could find silence. He didn't need luxury. He needed absolute quiet to sort through the chaos in his mind. Lily pushed open the door to the penthouse bathroom and nearly gasped. It was larger than her entire apartment. A white marble bathtub dominated the center of the room, its gold-plated faucets gleaming under a crystal chandelier. Everything was absurdly clean. But protocol was protocol. She began her work, moving in a state that was almost dreamlike as she cleaned the area around the toilet. A wave of sleepiness hit her like a tidal wave. Her eyelids felt like lead weights. Just for a moment, she told herself. I'll just rest my head on my arm for 5 seconds. Those 5 seconds stretched into a deep, dreamless sleep, right there on the toilet lid in the most luxurious bathroom in the city. Dylan entered the suite, tearing off his tie and tossing his jacket on the bed. He went straight for the bathroom, his mind set on a hot shower to wash away the day's fatigue. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, and then he froze. His heart seemed to stop for a beat before hammering against his ribs. What was that? A woman in a hotel staff uniform was slumped over, asleep on his toilet. It took Dylan's brain several seconds to process the surreal image. Was this a break-in? A bizarre prank? Had he finally worked himself into a state of hallucination? A horrified shout escaped his throat, echoing off the marble walls. What the hell is this? Dylan's yell was like a lightning bolt that jolted Lily awake. She shot up, lost her balance, and tumbled to the floor. The fall took the cleaning bucket with her, creating a loud clatter and a spreading puddle of soapy water. Oh my God! What's happening? Lily cried out in panic, her eyes wide as she stared at the half-naked man before her. Tall, dark-haired, with furious eyes and an infuriatingly handsome face. Reality crashed down on her like an avalanche. The luxurious bathroom, the expensive soap, her cleaning uniform, the guest room. She had fallen asleep in the guest room, and not just any guest, but the CEO of the entire corporation. I didn't steal anything. I swear. It was the first thing Lily could manage to say. Her hands raised in surrender, Dylan frowned, his confusion momentarily overriding his anger. Steal anything? Do you think I'm worried about a few bottles of shampoo? What are you doing in my bathroom? I fell asleep, Lily stammered, realizing how much worse that sounded. I mean, I was cleaning and you decided to take a nap? Dylan cut in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Is napping in guest rooms part of the new cleaning technique at this hotel? It's not like that. I worked a double shift. Lily tried to explain, her face burning with shame and fear. She was definitely getting fired. Dylan pinched the bridge of his nose, trying to remain calm. This situation was too absurd to be genuinely angry about. He turned, intending to call management to deal with this mess. He walked over to the minibar in the living area and poured himself a coffee from the automated machine. Lily scrambled to her feet, tiptoeing behind him, ready to receive her final judgment as Dylan brought the cup to his lips. She instinctively winced, that coffee aroma. It was so wrong. What now? Dylan stopped, catching her expression. You look like you just swallowed a fly. No. Nothing, sir, Lily said quickly, but it was too late. Speak, he commanded, his tone leaving no room for refusal. It's just the coffee, she mumbled. The Arabica beans were over-roasted, which gives it a burnt and acrid aftertaste. The machine probably used water that was too hot, scalding the natural oils of the beans. The moment the words were out, she was stunned at herself. They had tumbled out by instinct. Knowledge her grandmother had drilled into her since she was a child. Dylan lowered the coffee cup. Staring at her, he took a sip. It was, in fact, terrible. But he could never have articulated why with such precision. He looked at Lily, a girl trembling in fear of being fired, who had just analyzed a cup of coffee like a professional connoisseur. How did you know all that? He asked, curiosity now replacing the anger in his voice. My grandmother. She taught me, Lily replied, her voice still shaky. An idea sparked in Dylan's mind. The financial reports. The declining restaurant revenue, the quality of the food, and here, a cleaning lady with an extraordinary ability. Those weren't the words of a cleaner. Those were the words of someone with talent. What's your name? He asked, his tone completely changed. Lily Collins, sir. All right. Lily Collins, Dylan said, placing the cup down with a decisive click. "You're not fired yet, but you're going to have to prove you're good at more than just sleeping in my bathroom." The kitchen of the Scott Empire was a kingdom of stainless steel, fire, and shouting when Dylan pushed Lily through the doors. All activities seemed to cease. Dozens of pairs of eyes turned to stare at them. Curious and surprised, head chef Eduardo, a large man with an impressive mustache and a perpetually grumpy expression, strode forward. "Mr. Scott, what is the meaning of bringing a member of the cleaning staff in here?" he asked, his voice thick with disdain. "She's going to taste your breakfast menu," Dylan stated flatly. Ignoring Eduardo's attitude, a few snickers erupted from a corner of the kitchen. Eduardo crossed his arms over his broad chest. "I'm sorry? What did you say? You want a floor cleaning expert to give her opinion on my cuisine?" "Precisely," Dylan replied, his gaze cold. "Because it seems your experts have been disappointing my customers. Bring out the food." The tension in the kitchen was palpable. Lily felt like a lamb being thrown to the wolves. She wanted to run, but Dylan's stare kept her rooted to the spot. A few minutes later, an array of the signature breakfast dishes was placed before her. Scrambled eggs, toast, sausages, and a glass of orange juice. "Taste it," Dylan ordered. Trembling, Lily picked up a fork. She tried a bite of the eggs. She chewed slowly, her eyes closing as she focused entirely on the flavor. "The eggs are dry," she said, her voice soft but clear. "And this is the taste of vegetable margarine. Not real butter. It leaves an unpleasant, oily film in the mouth." Eduardo scoffed, but said nothing. Lily moved on to the toast. "This bread wasn't baked this morning. It's from yesterday. And it's gone stale from being stored improperly." She took a sip of the orange juice and grimaced immediately. "And this isn't fresh squeezed juice. It's been mixed with concentrate from a carton to cut costs. The artificial sweetness ruins everything." The entire kitchen fell silent. Even the sizzle of the pan seemed to have died down. Lily's comments were not vague complaints. They were precise diagnoses, exposing every shortcut, every cost-cutting measure that the chefs in the room knew about but had ignored. Eduardo stared at Lily, the smug look on his face gone, replaced by unconcealed astonishment. He knew she was right about every single word. Dylan looked at the head chef, an almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He turned to Lily, who was still standing there, pale with fear. "Welcome to the culinary department, Miss Collins," he said. "Your work officially begins now." Lily looked up, from Dylan to Eduardo, and back down at the half-eaten food. She didn't know if she had just stepped into a life-changing opportunity, or into a trouble far bigger than all the debts she was carrying. But one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. 2 days after the earthquake, in the kitchen, Lily Collins's life was turned upside down. She no longer pushed a heavy utility cart down the hallways. Instead, she spent most of her time in head chef Eduardo's noisy kingdom, under the curious and somewhat respectful gazes of the other chefs. She became the golden tongue of the Scott Empire. Eduardo, once an arrogant adversary, had become an unlikely collaborator. He had her taste everything, from newly imported olive oil to the soup of the day, and every time she made a comment, he would nod and furiously scribble notes. Yet, a sense of strangeness and displacement clung to Lily. She still wore her old uniform, only now it smelled of garlic butter instead of cleaning chemicals. She was still Lily Collins, the girl shouldering a mountain of debt, She was just temporarily living in a bizarre dream. That dream became even more surreal on the afternoon of the third day, when she was summoned to the CEO's office. Dylan Scott's office was on the top floor of the Scott Empire's central tower. A minimalist yet powerful space with floor-to-ceiling glass walls that displayed the entire city at his feet. Lily walked in, feeling small and out of place amidst the cold luxury. Dylan sat behind a massive ebony desk, bare except for a sleek laptop. He gestured for her to sit in the chair opposite him. "Ms. Collins," he began, his tone as if he were discussing a multi-million-dollar deal. "Over the past 2 days, Chef Eduardo has sent me 3 reports. All 3 share the same conclusion. Your suggestions have elevated the quality of the food to a new level." Lily swallowed hard. I just said what I tasted, sir. That's precisely the point," Dylan said, his eyes studying her as if she were a potential investment. "What you taste is worth more than years of experience from my highest-paid chefs. Your talent is real, and I am not in the habit of wasting assets." He paused, then continued, "Next week, there is a major international culinary event in Paris, Le Coeur de la Cuisine. It's where the world's top chefs, critics, and investors gather. I want you to accompany me." Lily blinked, her brain refusing to process the information. "Paris? With you, sir?" "That's right," Dylan confirmed. "As my special culinary advisor, your job will be to taste, to evaluate, and to help me identify new talents and groundbreaking trends. Naturally, you will be compensated accordingly." He pushed a thin contract across the desk toward her. "This salary is double your current income, including the double shifts you've been taking. All travel expenses will be covered by the company." Lily's eyes were glued to the number on the contract. Double. That number wasn't just money. It was better medicine for her father. It was a weight lifted from her mother's weary shoulders. It was a way out. The fear of a world she never dared to dream of, and the flickering hope of a less burdensome future, waged a war in her mind. She looked up at Dylan, who was waiting patiently for her answer. His face as cool as ever, but his eyes holding a strange certainty. He wasn't just making an offer, he was opening a door. I accept," Lily heard her own voice say, small but firm. The flight to Paris was unlike anything Lily had ever imagined. She sat in the soft leather seat of a private jet, sipping champagne that she was sure cost more than her month's rent, and watched the clouds drift by outside the window. Everything felt like a scene from a movie. Dylan sat opposite her, completely absorbed in his tablet, seemingly unaffected by the surrounding luxury. For him, this was reality. For Lily, this was a dream she was afraid she'd soon wake from. The hotel where they stayed in Paris was a magnificent palace. Lily's room was larger than her apartment, with a small balcony that looked directly out at the glittering Eiffel Tower. She had called her best friend, Carla, in a mild panic, and Carla had to rummage through her own closet and those of several other friends to cobble together a wardrobe of dresses that looked believably expensive. The first evening's gala was held at a 3-Michelin-star restaurant, where silence was more valuable than gold. The air was thick with elegance and power. Women in designer gowns, men in perfectly tailored suits, all speaking in sophisticated, hushed tones. Lily felt like a sparrow that had wandered into a flock of swans, the borrowed dress on her back seeming to scream that she didn't belong. And then Madeline appeared. She walked into the restaurant as if she owned it, Her blonde hair was swept up in a perfect chignon, a red silk dress clinging to her body. And the smile on her lips was both alluring and distant. All eyes turned to her. "Dylan." "Darling," Madeline cooed, her voice as smooth as velvet. "I was wondering when you'd finally show up." She glided to their table, placing a light kiss on Dylan's cheek before her sharp, knife-like gaze landed on Lily. "And this is Lily Collins," Dylan introduced, his voice even. "She's my culinary advisor for this trip." Madeline's eyebrows arched exquisitely. "Culinary advisor? How fascinating." She scanned Lily from head to toe, a cold, appraising look that made Lily want to shrink into her chair. "You've always had a taste for unique and unconventional projects, haven't you, Dylan?" Madeline's words were soft, but they were filled with thorns. They not only belittled Lily, but also hinted at an intimacy, a shared history with Dylan that Lily knew nothing about. A chill ran down Lily's spine. This wasn't just a wealthy woman, this was a rival. The main event of Le Coeur de la Cuisine took place the next day. In a historic hall with soaring ceilings and dazzling crystal chandeliers. The atmosphere was so formal that Lily could feel its weight on her shoulders. The highlight of the morning was a competition called Le Goût Aveugle, the blind taste. A contest reserved for only the most refined palates. Experts and top critics would taste a special, completely secret dish and had to analyze its components and preparation techniques. Lily and Dylan were seated in the front row. To her surprise, the announcer introduced one of the honorary judges and a sponsor of the competition. Madeline walked onto the stage, her smile radiant under the lights. "Ladies and gentlemen," Madeline began, "our challenge dish today is a unique creation, combining rare ingredients from the deep seas of Japan with the complex techniques of French molecular gastronomy. It demands a palate that is not only sensitive, but also profoundly knowledgeable." As she spoke, her gaze swept over the audience and paused on Lily for a fraction of a second. A look full of challenge and smugness. Dylan leaned close to Lily's ear. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to." But Lily knew it was no longer a choice. This was a battle that Madeline had openly declared. To back down now would be to admit defeat. "I'm in," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. As the silver dome plates were brought out, Lily felt her heart pound. She was seated at a table with a seasoned Italian critic and a rising young chef from Spain. The renowned food critic Jack Morrow also sat at the judges' table, his sharp eyes observing everything. The silver dome was lifted. Inside was a tiny work of art. A pale yellow foam rested atop a slice of dark orange sashimi. Dotted with a few drops of green oil, the hall fell silent. The only sound the faint clinking of silver forks. Lily took a deep breath, pushing away all the curious stares and the pressure around her. She closed her eyes, focusing only on the plate before her. Her world shrank, leaving only aroma, taste, and memory. She used her fork to take a tiny piece and brought it to her mouth. The first flavor exploded, the clean, sweet, and briny taste of the ocean. It was unlike any fish she had ever eaten. It was richer, with an almost creamy texture, sea urchin. It had to be premium sea urchin. The foam on top melted instantly on her tongue, leaving a delicate fragrance, slightly floral with a hint of bitterness. Her grandmother used to say that saffron was like a whisper in a dish. If you used too much, it became a scream. This chef had used it perfectly, and those green drops. A light, peppery, herbal note, basil oil. She had the main components. But there was something else, a faint, warming aftertaste that vanished quickly from the back of her throat. Ginger? No, it was more delicate, lemongrass. Not quite. She tasted it one more time. This time, she recognized it. Sake. They had used a high-grade Junmai Deginjo sake to lightly rinse the sea urchin, enhancing its sweetness and masterfully eliminating any fishiness. When the host began to call on each participant, Lily felt her palms grow damp with sweat. The Italian critic gave a very academic analysis. The Spanish chef talked about the foaming technique. Then, the spotlight turned to her. "Mademoiselle Collins," the host asked, "as a new face here, what are your thoughts?" Lily stood up, her voice a little shaky at first but growing steady. "This is an exquisite dish. The main ingredient is sea urchin from Hokkaido, cleansed with Junmai Deginjo sake. The foam is made from egg yolk and Iranian saffron, and the dish is finished with cold-pressed basil oil." A murmur of astonishment rippled through the hall. She had named every detail correctly. The smile on Madeline's lips froze. Jack Morrow, the formidable critic, spoke up, his voice deep and authoritative. "A very precise analysis, but do you think it is perfect?" This was the deciding question. Lily took a breath. "It is nearly perfect, but the intense sweetness of the sea urchin and the richness of the foam could become slightly overwhelming after a few bites. In my opinion, it needs just a hint of acidity. Perhaps a few drops of yuzu lemon to balance the richness and brighten the entire flavor profile." Silence descended. Even the top experts had to consider her suggestion. It was simple, yet perfectly logical. Jack Morrow stared at her for a few long seconds. Then he gave a slow, deliberate nod. Brilliant. It was just one word, but it echoed louder than a round of applause. Madeline's smile had vanished completely, replaced by a flash of unconcealed fury in her eyes. Dylan said nothing, but from across the room, Lily could see a rare, proud smile on his lips. A smile that seemed meant only for her. For the first time in her life, Lily Collins didn't feel like a cleaning lady in a borrowed dress. In that moment, she was an artist, an expert, and she knew that this battle in Paris had only just begun. The word brilliant from the critic Jack Morrow had become a passport for Lily Collins. In an instant, she was no longer just the girl with Dylan Scott. She became the golden tongue, the new discovery of Paris. At the parties and seminars that followed, people began to seek her out, renowned chefs, savvy investors. They no longer looked at her with curiosity or disdain, but with respect and eagerness. They invited her to taste their newest creations, listening to her delicate observations with an attention Lily had never dared to dream of. Dylan stepped back, taking on the role of silent observer. He watched how Lily handled this sudden attention first with a charming shyness, which gradually gave way to a quiet confidence. She was never arrogant. She simply shared her passion, a passion that was pure and genuine. And in Dylan's eyes, that image was more captivating than any designer gown or expensive piece of jewelry. That evening, he suggested they skip a lavish party to take a walk. Paris at night was a gentle love song. The golden light from the old-fashioned lampposts reflected on the shimmering surface of the Seine, while boats glided by softly, carrying distant music and laughter. They walked side by side in silence for a long time. A comfortable silence, no longer tinged with awkwardness. "I saw you sketching in your notebook," Dylan said suddenly. Breaking the quiet, Lily started. her hand instinctively tightening on her handbag, where she kept her treasure. It's just some random ideas. It didn't look like random ideas, Dylan said, his gaze warmer than usual. It looked like a dream. Lily stopped, leaning against the stone railing of the Pont des Arts. She looked down at the river, her voice filled with a distant longing. It was my grandmother's dream. She was a talented cook, but she spent her whole life in a small kitchen. She always dreamed of having her own bakery, a place where every pastry told a story. She passed everything on to me, except the opportunity. Dylan stood beside her, saying nothing, but his silence was full of understanding. My father believes passion is a liability, he said softly. A rare confession. He believes business runs on logic and cold numbers. He would never understand why someone would spend their entire life chasing the perfect flavor. Maybe that's because flavor is the only thing that doesn't lie, Lily replied, turning to look at him under the romantic streetlights. Her eyes shone with an unusual light. It speaks directly to a person's memory and emotions. That's not logic. That's magic. Dylan was captivated by the way she spoke about food, about passion. For the first time, he saw a world far removed from financial reports and tense meetings. He saw Lily's world, a world that was genuine, warm and full of flavor. He instinctively raised his hand, gently brushing away a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The light touch was like an electric current that made them both pause. The distance between them seemed to vanish. In a suspended moment in the heart of Paris, they looked deep into each other's eyes, recognizing an invisible but powerful connection forming between them. It was deeper than the relationship between a boss and an employee, or a tycoon and a rising talent. It was the resonance of two souls who had each felt lonely in their own worlds. The growing closeness between Dylan and Lily did not escape Madeline's sharp eyes. Lily's triumphant smile at the tasting competition had become a thorn in her side, and the increasingly obvious admiration in Dylan's eyes for that chambermaid had turned that thorn into a dagger. Madeline decided it was time to act. The next evening, as Lily was on her way back to her room after a long day of seminars, she saw Madeline sitting alone in the quiet lounge area near the elevators. She waved Lily over, her smile as perfect as ever. "Miss Collins, could you join me for a moment?" Lily hesitated, but to refuse now would be rude. She sat down in the armchair opposite her, keeping a safe distance. "You must be enjoying your time in Paris," Madeline began, her tone like that of an older sister advising a naive younger sibling. "Dylan is very good at discovering new things. He has a keen eye for the unique. Mr. Scott has given me a great opportunity," Lily replied cautiously. Madeline laughed, a clear sound that held no warmth. "An opportunity? Darling, Dylan doesn't hand out opportunities. He makes investments. He sees in you a talent that can be profitable, an interesting project, and he is a very good investor." Lily felt a sense of unease creeping in. "I don't think of myself as a project." "Oh, don't get me wrong," Madeline said, leaning forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I just don't want to see you get hurt. I know Dylan. We've known each other for a very long time." She took out her phone, swiped a few times, and turned the screen toward Lily. Don't mistake his fleeting amusement for something profound. On the screen was a series of photos. Dylan and Madeline laughing brightly on a luxury yacht. The turquoise sea behind them, Dylan and Madeline at a gala. his hand resting possessively on her waist. Dylan and Madeline on a ski trip, looking like a perfect couple against the snowy landscape. Each photo was a needle piercing through Lily's newly blossomed confidence. It was a world, a past that she did not belong to. He enjoys novelty, but in the end, he always returns to what is familiar and suitable, Madeline continued, retracting her phone. You are talented, I'll admit, but talent isn't enough to enter his world. Enjoy this trip. Think of it as a fun vacation, but don't delude yourself into thinking it will last. With that, she stood up, patting Lily's shoulder as if in consolation. Just a friendly piece of advice. Madeline left, leaving Lily sitting alone in the empty lounge. A cold feeling enveloping her. Madeline's words, those photos, they were like a slow-acting poison, turning the sweetness of Paris into a bitter taste. The seed of doubt had been planted. The next day, Lily was quiet. Her smiles were a little forced. Her answers short. She tried to act normal. But that subtle distance did not escape Dylan. That evening, after returning from a reception, he stopped her right outside her door. What's going on with you, Collins? He asked directly, impatience clear in his voice. You've been like a ghost all day. Lily avoided his gaze. It's nothing. I'm just a little tired. Don't lie to me, Dylan said, his voice dropping. I hate evasiveness. Did someone say something to you? Was it Madeline? Lily's silence was his answer. Dylan let out a long breath, his expression a mixture of anger and something like helplessness. You believe her? Lily finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with an undeniable hurt. What am I supposed to believe? That I'm not just another one of your unique projects? That after this trip, I won't be sent back to my clean bucket and my bills. The words tumbled out in a torrent, carrying all the insecurity and feelings of inadequacy she had tried so hard to suppress. Dylan looked at her, the anger on his face slowly fading, replaced by a complex expression Lily had never seen before. He reached out and opened the door to her balcony. Come out here. They stepped outside. The cool Parisian night air swept through her hair. Below them, the city of lights stretched out like a carpet of diamonds. It's true, Dylan began, his voice hoarse. At first, you were an anomaly, a problem to be solved. Then, you were a talent, an asset to be utilized. That's how my brain works. It always has. He turned to face her, his gaze intense under the moonlight. But then you did something that no one, not a business deal, no contract ever could. You made me stop. You made me listen. You made me see a world that isn't measured in profits and losses. He took another step. The space between them now just a hand's breadth. I have built my entire life on rules. Don't trust easily. Don't let emotions interfere with business. Never show weakness. I control everything. He paused, looking directly into her eyes. And then you showed up, asleep in my bathroom. And you broke every single one of those rules. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. You want to know what you are to me, Collins? His voice became almost a whisper. You are the only woman who makes me break every rule I've ever set for myself. And that terrifies me more than anything. The air stood still. Of all the answers she could have imagined, this was the one she never expected. A confession of weakness, of vulnerability. From a man who seemed invincible before Lily could react. Dylan closed the final distance between them. He cupped her face in his hands. And he kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was fierce, passionate, and a little desperate. as if all the pent-up emotions, all the doubts, all the fears of them both were being released in that single moment. Lily felt her final defenses crumble. She wrapped her arms around his neck, responding to his kiss with a longing she didn't even know she'd been hiding. The world around them disappeared. There was no Madeline, no gossip, no gap in status. There was only them. Two people under the Parisian sky, finally finding an undeniable truth in each other's arms. When they broke apart, they were both breathless. Dylan rested his forehead against hers, his eyes still closed. "Don't ever doubt that again," he whispered, and Lily knew from that moment on. Everything had changed. A storm might be coming, but she would no longer have to face it alone. The Parisian dawn was a soft, rosy pink, filtering through the balcony doors and painting shimmering streaks of light on the floor. For the first time in days, Lily woke up with a sense of peace. Last night's kiss seemed to have washed away all her insecurities, and the arms of Dylan, who was still sleeping soundly beside her, were a more solid guarantee than any promise. They had breakfast in the room, not a fancy feast, just crispy croissants and hot coffee. They talked about simple things, about Lily's dream bakery, about Dylan's favorite food as a child. In that moment, he wasn't a powerful CEO, and she wasn't a rising new talent. They were just two people in love, building a small world of their own, but that small world was shattered by the shrill ring of a telephone. Dylan frowned at the phone vibrating insistently on the table. It was his head of communications, he answered, and the smile on his lips instantly froze. "What?" he growled, his face becoming cold and sharp. "Which paper? How far is it spread?" A chill ran down Lily's spine. She watched Dylan as he paced the room, his short, clipped sentences cutting through the quiet air like knives. "I don't care about damage control. Find me the source. I want to know who's behind this." When he hung up, a heavy, terrifying silence filled the room. "What is it, Dylan?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Dylan didn't answer. He simply picked up his tablet, swiped a few times, and placed it on the table in front of her. The large, bold headline hit Lily like a physical blow, making her vision swim. Modern Cinderella or a chambermaid's ploy. CEO Dylan Scott, entranced by a talent of questionable origin. Below, it was a long article, written in a sarcastic and venomous tone. It recounted Lily's story in a twisted way, painting her as a cunning gold digger who had used some trick to seduce her boss. From accidentally falling asleep in his bathroom to putting on a show at the culinary competition. The article quoted anonymous insider sources, implying that her talent was merely a product of hype and a sordid affair. A paparazzi photo of them walking along the Seine the night before was included, making them look like a pair of clandestine lovers. Lily felt the blood drain from her face. It felt as if she were standing naked in a crowded square, being judged by thousands of scrutinizing eyes. Every word of the article was a slap to her dignity, to her talent, and to the love she had only just dared to believe in. "Madeline," Dylan said, his voice as cold as ice. It had to be her. He turned to look at Lily, and the fury in his eyes immediately softened, replaced by an unconcealed concern. He sat down beside her, taking her cold hand in his. "Lily, listen to me. This is just garbage. We will deal with this." But Lily just shook her head, tears beginning to fall. "They're right, aren't they? I'm just a chambermaid. Everyone will always think that I'm not worthy." "No," Dylan cut her off. His voice resolute, he lifted her chin, forcing her to look into his eyes. You are not what they write, and I will not let anyone define you that way. I will make them regret this. Dylan's promise was quickly put to the test. The scandal wasn't just a media storm. It had become a seismic event in the business world. The Scott Corporation's stock began to wobble. Competitors immediately seized the opportunity to spread damaging rumors. Dylan's phone rang incessantly, calls from board members, major investors, and his father. You're turning this corporation into a laughingstock. Theodore Scott's voice boomed through the phone. Get rid of that girl, Dylan. Immediately. I'm not getting rid of anyone, Dylan retorted, his voice firm. And she's not that girl. She's Lily. The call ended in a tense silence, but a greater challenge was yet to come. His head of communications called back, his voice frantic. Sir, the investors from Madeline's family faction are demanding an emergency board meeting. They're saying they want to hold a vote of no confidence. It was a direct assault on his power. Madeline didn't just want to humiliate Lily. She wanted to overthrow Dylan himself, while Dylan was trying to extinguish the business fire. Another personal crisis arrived unannounced. The door to his penthouse suite swung open. No knock, no warning. Only one person would dare to do that. Eleanor Scott entered, followed by two assistants. She wore a cream-colored Chanel suit and a string of pearls, every movement exuding a cool, aristocratic aura. Eleanor Scott didn't walk. She glided, and her presence immediately seemed to lower the temperature in the room by several degrees. Dylan, she said, her voice calm but commanding. I think we need to talk, and I also wish to meet the girl who has made my son turn his world upside down. Her gaze landed on Lily. A sharp, emotionless look. Asterisk. The private meeting between Lily and Eleanor took place in a luxurious tea lounge in the hotel. The space was quiet, with only the gentle melody of a piano and the clinking of porcelain teacups. Eleanor stirred her tea lightly. Without looking at Lily, my dear, I will be direct. I have no time for romantic fantasies. I am only concerned with the stability of the Scott family and corporation. Ma'am, I never intended to... Lily began, but Eleanor raised a hand to cut her off. I don't doubt your feelings. Feelings are cheap and fickle. I am concerned with consequences. She put her silver spoon down. Finally, looking directly at Lily, your presence by Dylan's side is causing damage. The stock, the reputation, the trust of our investors. Everything is under threat. She took a fountain pen and a checkbook from her Hermes bag. I want to offer you a solution. A compensation for the trouble my son has caused you. Write a number here. Any number you wish. She pushed the signed check toward Lily. It wasn't just an offer. It was an insult. She was putting a price on their love. On her dignity, Lily looked at the blank check, then looked up into Eleanor's cold eyes. For the first time, she no longer felt afraid. There was only a strange clarity. Thank you, ma'am, Lily said, her voice calm and steady. But I cannot accept it. Everyone has a price, Eleanor sneered. Perhaps, Lily replied, but my dignity and our feelings do not have a price, ma'am. I love your son not because he is a CEO or an heir. I love him for the man he is, and if you truly loved your son, you would want him to be happy, not just stable. She gently pushed the checkbook back toward Eleanor. Excuse me, I have an important appointment. With that, Lily stood up and walked away, her back straight. leaving Eleanor sitting alone with unconcealed astonishment on her perpetually composed face. She had underestimated this girl. The hotel's press conference hall was packed. Hundreds of reporters, cameras, and the continuous flashing of lights that felt like lightning. The air was thick with curiosity and anticipation. Dylan walked onto the stage, followed by Lily. He held her hand tightly, a public and defiant gesture. He began his speech, his voice cold and steely, filling the entire room. He didn't evade. He acknowledged the rumors but utterly refuted the fabrications. He spoke about the business, about new strategies, reassuring investors with the confidence of a true leader. And then he shifted his focus. But today, I am here not just as a CEO, he said, his eyes looking directly into the forest of cameras. I am here as a man. That article tried to turn an extraordinary talent into a cheap story. They want you to believe that Lily Collins got where she is because of a relationship. The truth is the other way around. He turned to look at Lily, his gaze softening. Our relationship exists because of her talent. I, like so many others, was won over by her intelligence, her integrity, and a pure passion that I have rarely seen. Lily Collins is a valuable asset to the Scott Corporation. She is the future of our culinary division. And she is also the woman I love. The room exploded. And I want to send a message to those on the board who are trying to use this to apply pressure. Dylan continued, his voice hardening again. If being with this woman means I have to give up my seat as CEO, then I am prepared to do so. It was a declaration of war, an all-or-nothing gambit amidst the chaos. A female reporter from a major newspaper shouted a question aimed directly at Lily. Miss Collins, what's your secret to going from a chambermaid to this position in such a short time? Was it just luck? The question was dripping with sarcasm. All eyes turned to Lily. This was her moment. Dylan squeezed her hand gently, a sign of his support. Lily stepped up to the microphone, taking a deep breath. Thank you for your question, she began, her voice clear and resonant. I have no secrets, and I don't believe in luck. I only believe in what is genuine. She gave a small smile. In the culinary world, there are ingredients that are very expensive, very flashy, but sometimes they have no real flavor. On the other hand, there are ingredients that are very simple, like a potato, a pinch of sea salt, or a wild herb. But if they are put in the right place, prepared with heart, they can create a dish you'll never forget. I think people are the same, she concluded, her eyes locking with the reporters. Your origins do not define your value. It is your authenticity, your passion, and what you contribute that makes you who you are. I am not trying to be an expensive ingredient. I am simply being myself. A stunning silence fell over the room. No one had expected such an intelligent and profound answer. And then a single person began to clap, then another, soon. The entire room was filled with applause. The camera flashes now felt less like an assault and more like a tribute. Dylan looked at Lily, his eyes filled with pride and a love deeper than ever before. He took her hand and raised it high for everyone to see. They were not just a couple facing the storm. They were a team, an unbreakable alliance, and they had just won a crucial battle together. Asterisk. The effect of the press conference spread faster than a wildfire. Lily's intelligent and genuine answer, combined with Dylan's powerful declaration, had completely turned the tide of public opinion. From a sordid love scandal, their story had transformed into an epic of talent, courage, and genuine love. Major newspapers that had initially been critical now praised them as a new symbol of integrity in business. The Golden Tongue and the Lion's Heart, one reputable paper had headlined. But the real battle was still ahead. The board meeting. The boardroom of the Scott Corporation was cold and tense. The opposition faction, led by a relative of Madeline's, sat on one side with smug expressions, certain they had cornered Dylan. Dylan walked in, followed by Lily. Her presence in such a high-level meeting was unprecedented, causing a wave of murmurs. "Dylan, this is no place for outsiders," Madeline's relative said, his voice full of condescension. "Lily Collins is not an outsider," Dylan retorted, his voice like steel. "She is a partner and the future of the culinary strategy I am about to present today." He began his presentation, but after outlining only the core problems of declining revenue, he paused, but to speak about the solution and the vision. "I will yield the floor to the true expert." All eyes turned to Lily as she stood up. She was nervous at first, but as she began to speak, her voice grew steady, filled with a passion that was powerfully infectious. She didn't talk about complex numbers. She talked about the soul of food. She presented a bold plan called the Scott Origins, a strategy to completely overhaul the hotel chain's culinary system, focusing on using local ingredients, partnering with organic farms, and telling the cultural story behind each dish. She didn't just present a business plan. She painted an inspiring picture of authenticity and quality when she finished. The boardroom was silent. Her plan was not only creative, it was also incredibly smart from a business perspective, tapping directly into the high-end market's trend towards sustainability and authentic values. The opposition tried to argue, but their arguments seemed weak and outdated in the face of such a compelling vision. Finally, one of the oldest neutral investors spoke up. "Gentlemen, for years, we have talked about numbers. For the first time, someone is talking to us about soul. I support this plan." That was the end of it. The vote of no confidence failed miserably. Dylan not only kept his seat, he solidified his power absolutely. A few days later, before they left Paris, Eleanor Scott came to see them. She no longer had her distant, aristocratic air, though she still maintained a certain formality. She looked at Lily, a long, deep look. "I was wrong," she said. A brief admission that carried the weight of 1,000 words. "I was wrong to think you were his weakness. You are his strength. Take care of my boy." It wasn't an apology, but for someone like Eleanor, it was the most sincere approval. She hadn't just accepted Lily. She had acknowledged her, after the tumultuous business trip in Paris ended. They returned to their home city. Their lives entered a new chapter. They no longer had to hide or fight. They became the most powerful and admired couple in the business world. But amidst the parties and meetings, they still found their own quiet moments. One autumn evening, Dylan took Lily to a small, cozy restaurant tucked away in a historic alley, a complete contrast to the Michelin-starred restaurants they had been to. "This is the first place where I realized that food wasn't just a business category," he said. "It's where I realized it could be art." The dinner proceeded in an intimate and romantic atmosphere. They reminisced about their incredible journey, from the chaotic meeting in the bathroom to the battles in Paris. "You've changed everything." "Lily," Dylan said, taking her hand across the table, "you brought flavor into my life, which was only filled with numbers. You taught me that the greatest weakness is sometimes not daring to trust anyone." "And you," Lily smiled, her eyes sparkling, "you showed me that the greatest dream isn't something you build by yourself, but something you can share with someone." Dylan stood up, walked to her side, and knelt down. He took out a small velvet box, Lily's heart seemed to stop. I lived a pre-programmed life, Lily Collins, until you showed up and reprogrammed everything. I don't want any future without you by my side. Without your intelligence, your courage, and even your crazy ideas. Will you marry me? Tears of happiness streamed down her cheeks as Lily nodded vigorously. Yes, I will. Dylan slipped the exquisite diamond ring onto her finger, and they shared a passionate kiss amidst the applause of the entire restaurant. But the surprise wasn't over yet. I have one more gift for you, he whispered. After dinner, he drove her to a historic arts district. He stopped in front of a corner shop that was under renovation. The sign was covered, but through the glass, she could see a cozy space with exposed brick walls and wooden floors. What is this? She asked. Dylan smiled, taking a golden key from his pocket and placing it in her palm. This isn't a gift, it's a beginning, he said. I don't want to give you a bakery. I want to give you the chance to build your grandmother's dream. Your dream. With your own hands, I will be your first investor and your most loyal customer. Lily looked at the key in her hand, then at Dylan, and tears fell once more. This was the most beautiful proposal. He didn't just love her. He believed in her dreams. 2 years later, the wooden sign with the words Grandma's Corner had become a familiar landmark for pastry lovers in the city. Lily's bakery wasn't large, but it was always bustling with customers. The scent of butter, sweet chocolate, and freshly baked bread wafted out onto the street. Lily, now a successful young entrepreneur, was personally showing a new employee how to roll croissant dough. Her former shyness was gone, replaced by the radiant confidence of someone who had found and mastered her passion. She was still a senior consultant for the Scott Corporation, and her Scott origin strategy had been a resounding success. But this bakery was her soul. The shop door opened. The small bell tinkling softly, Dylan walked in, carrying a cheerful 1-year-old boy in his arms, who had his father's exact eyes. The quality control team is here for an inspection, Dylan announced with a brilliant smile. Little Theo, in his arms, reached his chubby fingers toward a macaron on the counter. Lily laughed, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked out. She kissed Dylan on the cheek, and then her son's soft hair. The quality is still perfect, Mr. CEO. But this tiny customer seems to need a special sample. She took a small milk cookie and gave it to Theo. He happily took it, popped it in his mouth, and grinned. Dylan wrapped his arm around Lily's waist, pulling her close as they both looked at the happy scene before them. The bustling bakery, the cheerful chatter of customers, the warm aroma of pastries, and their beautiful baby boy. Their journey was not a fairy tale of a prince and a scullery maid. It was the story of two people from different worlds who fought together, grew together, and built their own definition of happiness. A happiness not measured in money or status, but in the sweet taste of fulfilled dreams and the warmth of a true love. And here, in Grandma's Corner, amidst the beautiful chaos of life, they have found it all.